From the time that Ignatius spent in Manresa while waiting to go to the Holy Land, through his time in Rome, he developed an instrument, a prayer, that has been a gift to the church from himself and the Society of Jesus ever since, the spiritual exercises. Ignatius composed them as a way of helping souls, helping people to understand better who Jesus Christ is, how to follow Jesus Christ better, and the implications of that following. The exercises are divided into 4 weeks, not exactly 7 days, but a series of topics that would be covered over roughly that period of time. The first week begins with the principle and foundation. What are we trying to get out? We're trying to understand the implications of our being creatures of God, that we were made by God, we're loved by God, that God has a goal for us. And then in the context of that, and only when we understand that love and that createdness, can we examine how we fail in the first week. We examine our sinfulness, the fact that we are not doing what God has called us to do. Once we have a sense of our sinfulness, then it becomes possible to listen to what God is asking of us in the midst of that sinfulness. The best way to do that is through discernment, through election. And so we begin with the contemplation. There are many different meditations on choosing to follow Jesus Christ. In the second week of the exercises, that following is accomplished by really moving into the scriptures and imagining ourselves as followers of Jesus in his lifetime, being with the disciples, being at the Last Supper, being at all of these experiences and listening and hearing and imagining what Jesus would say to us, with the goal again of knowing and loving and following Christ evermore. Now, all of that is well and good, but the reality of the Gospels is that there's also the crucifixion. There's also the suffering of Jesus. And that suffering has meaning. A lot of times when we confront suffering, pain, death in our lives, we don't understand it. It's a nothing. But in fact, with Jesus, death becomes something different. It becomes powerless. It becomes a way to the resurrection. And so the third week is really a following of Jesus on the cross and of deciding to what extent we're willing to take up our own crosses to follow Christ. After the third week, we move into the fourth week, which is the meditations on the resurrection. And the fact that the resurrection is the beginning of the story rather than the end. It's what gives meaning to the cross. It's what makes everything sort of become clear. The fourth week ends with the contemplation to obtain divine love, which is Ignatius's sort of final prayer of the exercises to remind us that we were created to love God, to reverence and praise and serve, and that now that desire becomes our free gift back. We're loved and we love. To love, you have to be free. It's not something that can be commanded. And so that freedom that we gain from that prayer and the spiritual exercises brings us to the moment where we leave the exercises, the fifth week. The exercises are intended not to be something that's just done in isolation, but something that's intended to be transformative of our relationship with Jesus Christ, with our God, with our neighbors, and to be ever more attentive to what God is asking of us specifically, not just to follow the commandments, to do good and avoid evil, but what is my specific call? How am I to follow Christ? What do I do with the gifts that I have? And how do I bring Jesus Christ to others?